Hello, everyone, and welcome to this third edition of Morning Melodies. We are glad that you have found your way here and have joined us. My name is Christine Campen, and I'm the pastor of seniors ministry here at Bakerview Church. We had hoped that we would be able to do this concert in person, but of course that isn't possible right now, and so we're glad that we can bring this to you virtually. We hope that you will be encouraged and enjoy the concert today. A little bit later in our program, Harry Heidebrecht, Bakerview's pastor emeritus, is going to share one of his wonderful life stories. So without further comment, we will get right into the music with Calvin Dick on violin, Betty Suderman on piano, and Alison Nystrom on vocals. Enjoy.
Panis Angelicus is often used as a benediction hymn. With music by César Franck and words by St. Thomas Aquinas, it is translated as, "Bread of angels made the bread of men. The bread of heaven puts an end to all symbols. A thing wonderful. The Lord becomes our food, poor, a servant, and humble. We beseech thee, Godhead one and three, that thou wilt visit us as we worship thee. Lead us through thy ways, we who wish to reach the light in which thou dwellest. Amen."
This next piece, The Lilac Tree, is one that my nanny used to sing to me as a young child. And there was always one word that made me cringe in it. Now, I hope it doesn't bother you today, but when you hear the word kiss, you can imagine little children cringing. A little boy and a little girl in an ecstasy of bliss, said the little boy to the little girl, "Pray give me just one kiss." The girl drew back in great surprise. "You're a stranger, sir," said she, "and I will give you just one kiss when the apples grow on the lilac tree." The boy felt very sad at heart. She was the only one. The girl felt quite remorseful at the terrible wrong she had done. So bright and early on the very next morn, he was quite surprised to see his little sweetheart standing in the garden, tying apples to the lilac tree. When I was a young child, I used to go into the fields and pick daisies and play a game, He Loves Me Not. I'm not sure if you did that, but that's what this song is about. One June morning through the meadow going, Betty found a yellow daisy growing, blooming there, bright and fair, nodding in the pleasant summer air. Tell me, Daisy, quickly, truly tell, does my dear one love me well? Will he be true till life is done? Then she plucked the petals one by one. He loves me not. Alas, to be deserted is love's sorest thought. He loves me not. Be still, the rapid beating of my heart. He loves me not. Beware, little flower, how you play your part. He loves me not. You lying little daisy, he loves me.
Someday, I would love to lie down in an English meadow and drink in the sound of the meadowlark. Apparently, the meadowlark sings and sings as it flies higher and higher into the sky until it disappears from view, although the listener can still hear its song. Rafe Vaughan Williams has written a piece imitating the song of the lark. But to set the scene, I would like to read just a part of George Meredith's poem entitled Lark Ascending. He rises and begins to round. He drops the silver chain of sound, of many links without a break, in chirrup, whistle, slur, and shake. All intervolved and spreading wide like water dimples down a tide, where ripple over curls and eddy into eddy whirls. A press of hurried notes that run so fleet they scarce are more than one. Yet changingly the trills repeat and linger, ringing while they fleet. sweet to the quick of the ear and dear to her beyond the handmaid ear, who sits beside our inner springs, too often dry for this he brings, which seems the very jet of earth. At sight of sun, her music's mirth, as up he wings the spiral stair, a song of light and pierces air. With fountain ardor, fountain play, to reach the shining tops of day, and drink in everything discerned, an ecstasy to music turned. Impelled by what his happy bill disperses, drinking, showering still, unthinking, save that he may give his voice the outlet, there to live, renewed in endless notes of glee, so thirsty of his voice is he. For all to hear and all to know that he is joy, awake, aglow. The tumult of the heart to hear, through pureness filtered crystal clear, and know the pleasure sprinkled bright by simple singing of delight. Shrill, irreflective, unrestrained, rapt, ringing, on the jet sustained, without a break, without a fall, sweet, silvery, sheer lyrical, perennial, quavering up the chord, like myriad dews of sunny sward, that trembling into fullness shine, and sparkle dropping argentine. Such wooing as the ear receives from zephyr caught in choric leaves of aspens, when their chattering net is flushed to white with shivers wet. And such the water's spirits chime on mountain heights in morning's prime, too freshly sweet to seem excess, too animate to need a stress. But wider over many heads the starry voice ascending spreads, awakening as it waxes thin, the best in us to him akin. And every face to watch him raised puts on the light of children praised. So rich our human pleasure ripes when sweetness on sincereness pipes. Though naught be promised from the seas, but only a soft ruffling breeze, sweep glittering on still content, serenity in ravishment.
Pie Jesu is taken from Andrew Lloyd Webber's Requiem. The text is simple but profoundly moving. Merciful Jesus, who takes away the sins of the world, grant them rest. Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world, grant them everlasting rest.
Good evening, good night. Arguably the world's most recognizable lullaby, Brahms's Wiegenlied is a soothing melody designed to calm even the most restless child. It describes sleeping under a canopy of roses and carnations, watched over by angels, and it finishes with, "Sleep softly now and blissfully, behold paradise in your dreams." Guten Abend, gute Nacht, mit Rosen bedacht, mit Näglein besteckt, schuf an den Eck, morgen früh, wenn Gott will, wirst du wieder geweckt. Morgen früh, wenn Gott will, wirst du wieder geweckt. Guten Abend, gute Nacht, mit Englein bewacht, die zeigen im Traum die Christkindleins Baum. Schlaf nun selig und süß, schau im Traumsparadies. Schlaf nun selig und süß, schau im Traumsparadies. Claude Debussy's Nuit d'étoiles is the night of stars. You can hear the starlight twinkling in the rolled notes of the piano, and the melancholic vocal line describes being under the veil of stars, resplendent with breezes and fragrance. The singer remembers bygone loves. Nuit d'étoiles, sous tes voiles, sous ta brise et tes parfums, triste lyre qui se
So, Allison, I hear you've been taking piano lessons.
I have.
And I'm thinking this introduction would be just the right level for you to be able to play for your own accompaniment. So why don't you come and show us what you can do?
All right.
I'm sure it will be terrific.
Okay. Here we go.
I think you could have more dynamics. Why don't you just try it one more time? Play it with more feeling.
How's that?
Well, maybe it's just a little much. How about somewhere in between? And then it will be perfect, I'm sure.
Okay.
Lovely.
Good night, my someone. Good night, my love. Sleep tight, my someone. Sleep tight, my love. Our star is shining, its brightest light. For good night, my love. For good night. Sweet dreams be yours, dear, if dreams there be. Sweet dreams to carry you close to me. I wish they may, and I wish they might. Now good night, my someone, good night. True love can be whispered from heart to heart. When lovers are parted, they say. But I must depend on a wish and a star, as long as my heart doesn't know who you are. Sweet dreams be yours, dear, if dreams there be. Sweet dreams to carry you close to me. I wish they may, and I wish they might. Now good night, my someone, good night. Good night.
This duet is considered the most famous barcarolle ever written. It is taken from the opera The Tales of Hoffmann by Jacques Offenbach. It tells of a beautiful night of love where the tender breezes caress those who enjoy the evening.
You will notice that my stories are all little stories. My little red wagon, my little pet lamb, my little red testament, and today, our little house on the prairie. Our little house on the prairie could be spotted in a large valley on a small acreage a mile or two west of the village of Linden, Alberta. It stood on a narrow strip of land wedged between the CPR tracks to the west, the Knee Creek to the south, and fenced grasslands to the east. Our only access was from the north, over church and private property, along a quarter-mile of prairie dirt road. At the end stood our 3-room, weather-beaten house. It was home for a family of 12, and I was third youngest of 10 children. At night, space became even more cramped as 5 girls retreated to the small girls' room. My parents and 4 boys bedded down in the living room, and our oldest brother on a roll-out mattress in the kitchen. There were few amenities, no electricity, no telephone, no indoor plumbing, not even a well. Only 3 rooms and a path to the biffy. Besides family, our 3-acre strip of land was home to an assortment of farm animals, chickens, pigeons, a few turkeys, a pig, 2 or 3 cows, and sometimes a goat. There being little room indoors for activity, the outdoors became our playground. In summer, there were pools for swimming in the creek. In winter, when it froze over, an endless rink for skating. A large valley providing ample space for exploration on hills, through coulees, and along creek banks. The surrounding hills provided slopes for sledding and tobogganing in winter. You will understand, though we were poor, I don't ever recall feeling deprived. It was a Saturday. Every Saturday was special because of the CPR train that passed by our little prairie home. It was little more than a freight train with a passenger car and a caboose attached. As it chugged past our house, we would stand in line along the fence and wave to the friendly crew. What made the Saturday train extra special was the friendly conductor who stood on the platform of the caboose and tossed a bundle of last week's papers and magazines. The funny papers, were part of that bundle. And even us younger siblings enjoyed the exaggerated cartoon characters. That was until one day a traveling preacher visited our home and told our parents it was sin to read the funnies. As it turned out, it was sin only for a short season, and soon we were back waiting along the tracks for the next installment of Popeye the Sailor Man. After arriving in Canada in 1925, our parents attempted farming for several years. But in time, due to hail and then drought, they gave up farming. And my father worked for local farmers as a farmhand. His earnings, plus the big garden and a cache of farm animals, was adequate to sustain our family. The year 1946 was perhaps our most memorable year as a complete family. January, as usual, was cold, and our feed supply had run low. My father bored a team of horses into hay rack, and by dusk was on his way home with a load of hay. Because of cold temperatures, He would alternate between riding on the hayrack and walking beside the horses in order to keep warm. He noticed headlights approaching from the rear. So he stopped the team of horses in order to climb back onto the hayrack. But instead of passing, the vehicle plowed into the back of the hayrack, spooking the horses. My father landed on the road between the horses and the hayrack. Thankfully, he was alive, but he suffered a severe fracture to his leg. He was taken to a nearby farmhouse, from where they called the country doctor to reset the brake and place his leg into a cast. He remained there several days until they were able to bring him home. He was laid up for 7 months, unable to work. It was on a Saturday in early December that we once again heard the approach of the Saturday train. This time, however, instead of passing by, it came to a full stop with the passenger car and caboose just opposite our house. Unexpectedly, the friendly conductor and some of the crew detrained to hand deliver food, gifts, and Christmas cheer to our door. And suddenly, as they arrived, they also departed, waving and wishing us a Merry Christmas. In my imagination, I've relived this scene often, never without reliving the joy and excitement that filled our little house on the prairie. That memory, though by now somewhat embellished, has remained with me. The memory resurfaced again almost 60 years later as I sat in my car at the Greyhound bus terminal in Vancouver, awaiting the arrival of my wife Margaret. It was a blustery evening, with condensation already clouding up the windows of my car, when there was a sudden knock on my window. Startled, I opened my car door and saw a woman standing there, wet and shivering in the cold. She asked for spare change to buy food, but I had left my change at home. So I closed both the door of my heart and my car, politely declining her request. I did so with some guilt, knowing I had a $20 bill in my pocket. The woman just remained there, standing outside my door. Finally, I opened the door once more to ask if there was a restaurant in the bus depot. She said there was, but it closed at 9 p.m. Once again, I closed the door and left her standing in the cold just outside my car. It was then, almost simultaneously, I remembered the kind conductor and spied the golden arches of McDonald's some distance down the street. Somewhat out of guilt, and by now also compassion, I stepped out of the comfort of my car, and together we began walking towards McDonald's. As we walked, she began sharing her tragic story. I inquired if she had shelter for the night. She said she didn't, but knew a place to stay for a modest price. By now, I realized that if I didn't turn back, I wouldn't be there on time to pick up Margaret when she arrived. Explaining this, I reached into my pocket for the $20 bill and gave it to her. Re-energized, she continued on her way, stopping at intervals to turn around and call out to me, "Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas!" As she crossed the busy street, I saw her for a last time, waving and once again calling, "Merry Christmas!" This might seem an appropriate way to conclude my story. But if I did, I would be remiss. When the next Saturday train would roll by our little house on the prairie, my 10-year-old brother, Victor, had become ill. By Sunday, he was too sick to attend the service in our country church. Mother and my older brother stayed home with him while the rest of us walked to the service. Midway through the service, my father was called out unexpectedly. Sensing an emergency of some kind, a lay minister and a deacon soon followed. The emergency, however, was not what they had imagined. Victor had sent for his dad, in his own words, because he didn't know if he was saved. Referring to John 3:16, the lay minister explained the way of salvation. Victor prayed a simple prayer inviting Jesus into his heart. Once more, our little house was filled with excitement and great joy. Joy beyond the cluster of people gathered there, but joy reaching to the very portals of heaven where the angels of God rejoiced with us over a sinner who had repented. By Tuesday, our parents became alarmed, and by car they rushed Victor to the General Hospital in Calgary. The mood was somber as the doctor examined him and ordered immediate surgery. The attending surgeon, however, was hesitant, fearing that he would not survive surgery. And so for the remainder of the day, by all means available, they sought to strengthen his weakened body. That same evening, as they wheeled him to the operating room, they stopped once again to give my father and son perhaps a last opportunity to look into each other's eyes. As my father said later, when he looked into Victor's brown eyes, there was no sign of fear, only peace. Victor died while in surgery, Tuesday, December 17th, 1946. We gathered for his funeral on Saturday, December 21st. And as we were gathered, I could hear in the distance the sound of the Saturday train once more rolling past our little house on the prairie. Searching for an appropriate conclusion to my story, I looked out from my study window. From the vantage point of our mountain home, I saw a cloud-covered valley below. Then looking up, I saw Mount Baker, and even a lower peak protruding through the clouds, white and glistening in the brightness of the sun, bringing joy and delight to the observer. Twice that December, we too experienced peaks of joy. The first, when the Saturday train stopped at our little house to deliver Christmas cheer. The second, an even taller peak, the Sunday morning when Victor sent for Dad. This greater joy became our constant source of comfort and hope as we grieved even that Christmas day. Calvin Dick requested a song to conclude my story. I've chosen, O Love That Wilt Not Let Me Go, by the blind poet-preacher George Matheson, with special attention to stanzas 3 and 4. O joy that seekest me through pain, I cannot close my heart to thee. I trace the rainbow in the rain and feel the promise is not vain, that morn shall tearless be. O cross that liftest up my head, I dare not ask to flee from thee. I lay in dust, life's glory dead, and from the ground there blossoms red, life that shall endless be.
O love that wilt not let me go, I rest my weary soul in thee. I give thee back the life I owe, that in thine ocean depths its flow may richer fuller be. O light that followest all my way, I yield my flickering torch to thee. My heart restores its borrowed ray, that in thy sunshine's blaze its day may brighter, fairer be. O joy that seekest me through pain, I cannot close my heart to thee. I trace the rainbow through the rain, and feel the promise is not vain, that morn shall tearless be. O cross that liftest up my head, I dare not ask to fly from thee. I leave dust life's glory dead, and from the ground there blossoms red, life that shall endless be.
Thank you so much, Calvin, Allison, and Betty, for sharing your musical gifts with us this morning, and Harry for sharing another of your life stories. If you would like to help us to cover the costs of this morning, your donation would be gratefully accepted. Either you can send a check to Bakerview Church or donate online at bakerview.org/give. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you again. The peace of Christ go with you.